Per usual, living on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. I am back from ETH Denver just in time on the East Coast before the blizzard. Let's take a look at some charts. Not much has changed week over week. Basically the same story. Defensives continue to win. ex-US continues to win. Commodities continues to win. Macro continues to be a mess. Economic data all over the place. Looking at the ETF flows, BTC still consistently negative, not by a large margin, but not positive. ETH also, same story. Ripple and Sol are seeing some inflows, but nothing really that's going to move the needle realistically. MSTR still buying, BMNR still buying. Clearly has not mattered. There are still more sellers than buyers. COT data looks about as bearish as you could get. We have commercials in the red there, very large net short position in a vacuum, you might say, and as people have said, well, when commercials are this short, that tends to be the bottom. That could be, but they could also just stay net short for 16 weeks, right? You know, you can't really say that without having hindsight. This is not a go long picture. Again, I don't know how many different people need to post this. I respect Tom McClellan a lot. I expect Subu trade a lot, but it is not, for me anyway, a condition where I would want to long based on the COT data. ETH, same thing, continues to just be negative for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is not conditions that historically we have seen favorable for a bullish trend. You know, be careful how I say that. Even if net commercials are decreasing their short positions, that's something you could hold on to and say, okay, you know, let's take a shot. But no, we're not seeing that. I posted this 4-hour idea for BTC, for Sol, ETH, right? All this stuff over the weekend. Didn't catch a bid, ran into some tariff stuff, and it all broke down. You know, that's just the way things go. I don't think anything beyond Sol at this point in time is even worth thinking about. I think it's honestly BTC or Sol here, trade-wise. ETH is sort of in the middle. Everything else is basically correlating. And in my personal opinion, like I said here, Sol has plenty of juice. So if you're looking for, you know, leveraged BTC, Sol is, in my opinion, the place to be for a trade. We're not talking about long-term. We're not talking about fundamentals. We're just talking about trading environment right now. We'll take a look at the current charts, but as I said, those broke down on some tariff drama, which is what I wrote about today for Canary. Doesn't look like rates are changing at all in March. Take a look at the rate probabilities today. Even if we get jobs data next week, it's unlikely that jobs data next week that would support a cut. It's unlikely that we see a cut this close to a meeting. We are at the BTC cost of production, which historically has meant something. It has meant we are close to a bottom. I just don't know if any of this stuff matters right now. We have sentiment in the toilet. You know, this is lower than when FTX blew up. This is lower than 2020. This is lower than COVID, I think, right? Has to be. Sentiment is quite bad. There's a lot of FUD around quantum. There's a lot of FUD around AI, and we still continue to correlate with software. And looking at the current chart for BTC, I like taking a shot, shooting your shot when you have a consolidation that is at least visible, right? And on a 4-hour, we had that and we broke down. We had a consolidation up here, we broke down. No div yet because we're not getting a lower low on higher RSI, but that's something to watch for here. If we go lower, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard to get RSI less than 20, less than 15, whatever it was back here, which means you are likely to put in a div at some point, just as you did back here, March, April, May, 2025. So that at this point, that would be the next thing to watch for, because there is nothing going on here. This is just bearish, below the cloud the entire time, aside from that minor attempt on BTC a couple weeks ago. And MSTR also, you know, what is there to do here? Nothing. Just this is a bear trend, right? I don't long bear trends personally. You don't have the trend on your side. I would rather wait 2 months, 3 months to see if we can get into the 145 region. And then you have an excellent trade that I like with options. I like with leverage. I like with organs, everything on the table. But this is not the place for that. This is not the place to sell your kidneys, in my opinion. IBIT, same deal. You're starting to see a divergence here just because of the hours of trad markets relative to crypto, but still nothing, in my opinion, that is longable. And if anything, the cloud acted better because it never got in the cloud here a few weeks back. So there will be a trade at some point. Maybe it's 2 to 3 months from now. I just don't see anything here. And I'd rather wait for a high conviction setup than guess. Here's IGV, which also going lower. This is a massive div at this point for IGV. Huge lower low on less momentum. This does look a little fearful, right? So if BTC looked like this, I wouldn't hate spot buys personally. It probably would pull me out of STRC a little bit to start buying, mainly because at that point we'd be in the bear flag breakdown region from 51 to 61, but we're not seeing that on BTC yet. And I don't really want to trade IGV personally. ETH, same deal, absolutely no difference. Same setups, same things to watch for, waiting for a div. That's it. Doesn't matter. Again, doesn't matter who's buying because it clearly has not moved price higher. Sol, same deal. If anything, there's a little double top at the bottom and just bearishness all the way down. So looking for divs, looking for lower lows. Other than that, really nothing going on for crypto. MVRV also almost dipping into the buy zone. This is market value versus realized. We're almost to the point where we're seeing no unrealized profits on a relative basis, which is where we start to get into the value zone, typically for an extended period of time, months. So, you have plenty of time. Hash rate and hash price. Hash ribbons also signaling bearishness here. This is not, no matter what anybody tries to tell you, there is certainly more bearish evidence than bullish evidence here. And I also just checked Pi cycle real quick. This actually never crossed this cycle, as many people suspected it would not. A lot of people really loved Pi cycle because it caught the top on the last one. So crypto just not the place to be, and I'd rather have it black or white. It's currently pretty obvious, just not the place, not the time to take crypto trades, in my opinion. Economic calendar this week, lots of Fed speak. Waller, Goolsby, Bostic, Waller again, Cook, Barkin, Schmid, Muslim, everybody, right? Everybody's in the pool. They're talking Bowman. PPI, whatever. Maybe we'll see something on the Case-Shiller Home Price Index, but I don't think any of this is enough to move the needle this week. Next week, it's jobs data, assuming none of this is delayed because of the partial government shutdown or whatever's going on. So nothing too important on the calendar for me this week other than NVIDIA earnings. Looking at the rate probabilities, still not really pricing in anything until June, July. And even then, it's kind of a coin flip. That's when we may see a new Fed governor. So until then, probably not looking super, super hot for much of anything. And this sort of feeds into the idea that it's going to take a couple months for crypto to figure out what it wants to be this year. Trueflation has perked up a little bit, but it's still far below 2.4, and it's still far below even estimates that we're seeing coming in for February on CPI, core CPI, CPE, PCE, etc. So this continues to move lower, which is great, and we continue to see evidence for potential cuts later in the year, which is great, but nothing is coming to save anything right now. What continues to look great is TLT, just risk off stuff. Any of the bond stuff, the 2-year, the 3-year, the 4-year, right? Any of that stuff looks excellent here for a trade, for a setup. I don't care about fundamentals really at all. They are a problem long-term. But if I told you this was any other chart, you'd say, yeah, I'd have alerts right at this level. High breakout potential based on how long this has consolidated. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4-year consolidation, and it looks ready to break higher. Just as a SPY, kind of doing nothing. Not bearish yet. Does look like it's headed for neutral. No doubt about that. Not as bearish as the Qs. Qs ready to break below the cloud. So in general, things could look worse if and as they look worse. Crypto is unlikely to be spared. Something to watch for is if and when the SPY does break down, where does crypto diverge? Where does crypto diverge from IGV, if at all? That is something to take note of. So it's too early for any of that. Maybe this goes neutral sideways for the whole year, just chops around, does nothing, fine. But if this starts to break down, unlikely that crypto will be spared. Equal weight, S&P looks okay, not really a trade or anything here for me. There's some trades, setups I've got in the back half. We'll get to those. Where everybody's going is the global stuff. Global indices are popping off significantly. Global cyclicals versus defensives, heavily favoring cyclicals, aka risk on in global markets. Non-US continues to do very, very well. Qs, like I said, just look increasingly bearish. We're in neutral territory here. Certainly not long category at all. Looking at IWM, also just kind of doing nothing. Nothing really going on there. Not as bearish as the Qs. Doesn't really look like a long to me at this point. SMH, oddly enough, this looks okay. This kind of looks like a cup and handle. Now, it really depends on what NVIDIA does and on earnings, but I don't hate a trade on this. I don't love a trade on this, but I don't hate a trade on this. At least you have a consolidation and an obvious level for a breakout. Definitely looks better than IGV, right? Mags also very bearish. Below the cloud, just absolutely nothing to do here on the long side, in my opinion. You don't have a pattern. You don't have a div. You're not even to the target, right? So what is there to do here? Nothing. So collectively on Mag 7, just not the time. Not the time to be there. Contrast that with something like XLU or XLV. This is utilities, getting a little bit of a handle now on what I had suspected to be a cup and handle just because of how quickly this broke out to the previous level. Would love to see some continued consolidation here and eventual breaking higher. But this is not generally risk-on type stuff, even though, yes, this is data center, power, AI, HPC oriented. Still looks very, very good to the long side. XLV is another one. Healthcare, huge cup and handle here. Teasing highs, looks excellent. Can't say the same for just about anything that we looked at today so far in this video. Real estate also starting to break out, despite the fact that buyers and sellers are way out of whack here. So AKA houses are not moving. Nobody's buying anything relative to what's available. Chart still looks good. Doesn't really matter to me, right? XLE also looks good on the energy side. There are a lot of uranium ETFs, URA, URNM, they all look sort of different. They all have slightly different holdings. Of the ETFs that I looked at, this is the strongest one to me on the uranium side. Clear cup and handle, inverted head and shoulders, whatever you want to call it. Looks better than most of them. And sadly today, Zoom is down 7%. Still holding on to that one. Still holding on to IREN. Miners doing okay today. WGMI doing, at least it's green. Everything pretty much on my list today was red, except risk off, defensive. VIX was higher. So a lot of anger out there, probably relative to the macro uncertainty. All the more reason to T-bill and chill. That's all I got for this one. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.